world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. Shakespeare, as understood by Erving Goffman. Quick question. When was the last time you had a conversation where someone said what they actually meant, felt what they claimed to feel, and presented themselves as who they really are? If you're struggling to remember, that's because it probably never happened. What you remember as authentic conversations were actually just really good performances by people who were skilled enough at social theater that you didn't notice they were acting. Sociologist Erving Goffman discovered something that explains why modern social life feels so exhausting and superficial. We're all actors performing characters we've created for public consumption, and we've become so committed to these performances that we've forgotten who we are when we're not performing. Right now, you're probably thinking, "But I'm authentic with people. I don't put on an act." What you see is what you get. That thought you just had, that's part of your performance. The belief that you're more authentic than other people is one of the roles you play, the role of the genuine person who doesn't play roles. Goffman observed that social interaction is essentially theater, with everyone playing characters designed to create specific impressions on their audience. The difference between social life and actual theater is that in social life, the actors have convinced themselves they're not acting. Think about how differently you behave with your boss versus your best friend versus your parents versus strangers. You're not just adjusting your communication style, you're becoming a different character in each context. The professional self who speaks in corporate buzzwords and hides personal struggles. The social self who laughs at jokes that aren't funny and pretends to enjoy activities that bore you. The family self who plays familiar roles and avoids topics that might disrupt established dynamics. Which one is the real you? Goffman's disturbing answer: none of them and all of them. You're a collection of performances that have become so habitual, you experience them as your personality. This isn't conscious deception, it's unconscious social survival. But it creates a world where everyone is performing for everyone else. Nobody is getting authentic connection, and everyone feels vaguely lonely despite being constantly surrounded by people. You want to be truly known and accepted, but you're only showing people carefully curated versions of yourself that you think are socially acceptable. Then you wonder why your relationships feel superficial and why you feel like nobody really understands you. Meanwhile, everyone around you is doing exactly the same thing, creating a social environment where genuine authenticity feels risky, vulnerable, and potentially catastrophic for your reputation and relationships. The result is a society of actors performing for other actors, all desperately seeking authentic connection while simultaneously making authentic connection impossible through their commitment to social performance. Part 2. The front stage and backstage of your fake life. Here's something that'll explain why you feel like you're living a double life. Goffman discovered that every social interaction has two distinct regions: the front stage, where you perform for your audience, and the backstage, where you drop the performance and prepare for the next scene. Your front stage is anywhere you're being observed and evaluated by others. Your backstage is where you go to rest from performing, plan your next performance, and briefly be yourself without an audience. Think about your workspace. When you're at your desk, in meetings or interacting with colleagues, you're front stage, performing the role of competent professional. You modulate your voice, control your expressions, and present a version of yourself designed to maintain your professional reputation. But when you're alone in the bathroom, walking to your car, or talking to trusted friends during lunch, you're backstage. You might complain about work, express frustration, or show emotions that would be inappropriate for your professional character. The problem is that modern life has dramatically expanded the front stage while shrinking the backstage. Social media means you're performing even when you're home alone. Open office designs eliminate physical backstage spaces. The expectation to be always on professionally means the performance never really ends. You're performing so much of the time that you're losing touch with who you are when you're not performing. Your backstage self, the part of you that has genuine thoughts, feelings, and reactions, gets less and less space to exist. This creates what Goffman called role strain, the exhaustion that comes from constantly managing your performance across multiple front stage contexts. You have to remember which version of yourself you're supposed to be in each situation, maintain consistency within each role, and smoothly transition between roles without letting the audience see the switches. Think about how draining it is to go from a work meeting where you're performing professional competence, to a family dinner where you're performing filial duty, to a social event where you're performing likability and fun. Each context requires a different character with different emotional expressions, conversation topics, and behavioral expectations. By the end of the day, you're not just physically tired, you're psychologically exhausted from managing multiple performances simultaneously. The worst part is that you can't fully relax even in your backstage spaces because you're always preparing for the next front stage performance. You're rehearsing conversations, managing your appearance, and planning how to present yourself in upcoming social situations. Even your private thoughts become contaminated by performance considerations. You find yourself thinking about how you'd explain your thoughts to others, how your private feelings would look if they became public, or how your personal experiences could be packaged for social consumption. The boundary between your authentic self and your performed self becomes so blurred that you lose the ability to distinguish between genuine thoughts and thoughts that are designed for an imaginary audience. You end up living your entire life as if you're always on stage, which means you never get to fully exist as the person you are when nobody's watching. Part 3. The impression management that's consuming your life. Here's where Goffman gets really uncomfortable. You spend an enormous amount of mental energy every day managing the impressions other people have of you, and this impression management has become more important to you than actually being the person you want people to think you are. Impression management is the process of controlling the information others receive about you to influence how they perceive and evaluate you. It's not just about lying or being fake, it's about strategic communication, selective disclosure, and careful curation of your public image. Think about your social media presence. How much time do you spend choosing the right photo, crafting the perfect caption, or timing your posts for maximum engagement? You're not just sharing your life, you're managing impressions about what kind of life you have. The beach vacation photo that doesn't show the argument you had with your partner. The professional achievement post that doesn't mention the anxiety you felt about accepting the recognition. The happy family photo that doesn't capture the stress of coordinating everyone's schedules. This isn't necessarily dishonest, but it's strategically incomplete. You're presenting the parts of your experience that create the impression you want others to have, while omitting the parts that might complicate that impression. This same process happens in all your social interactions. In job interviews, you emphasize experiences that make you seem qualified while minimizing experiences that might raise concerns. In romantic relationships, you highlight your attractive qualities while managing information about your flaws or past mistakes. With friends, you share struggles that make you seem relatable while hiding struggles that might make you seem burdensome. With family, you present enough success to avoid concern, while not so much success that you create envy or pressure. The problem is that impression management becomes a full-time job that consumes massive amounts of psychological resources. You're constantly monitoring how you're being perceived, adjusting your behavior based on audience reactions, and calculating the impression consequences of every choice you make. This leaves less mental energy available for actually living your life, pursuing your goals, or developing genuine relationships. You become so focused on how things look that you stop paying attention to how things actually are. You might stay in situations that look good but feel bad, make choices that photograph well but don't serve your authentic interests, or maintain relationships that enhance your social image while draining your emotional resources. The ultimate tragedy of impression management is that it often prevents you from getting what you actually want. You're so busy managing how you appear that you lose touch with who you actually are and what you actually need. You end up optimizing for other people's perception of your life rather than for your actual experience of your life. And since other people are also managing their impressions rather than being authentic, you're performing for an audience of other performers who aren't even paying genuine attention to your performance. It's theater for an audience of actors who are too busy preparing for their own scenes to appreciate your acting. Part 4. The social roles that are imprisoning your identity. Here's something that explains why you feel trapped in your own life. Goffman discovered that social roles aren't just things you do, they're things you become. And once you've committed to a role, it starts controlling your behavior, thoughts, and even your sense of self. A social role is a set of expectations, behaviors, and responsibilities associated with a particular position or identity. When you take on a role, parent, professional, spouse, friend, you're not just agreeing to perform certain tasks. You're agreeing to become the kind of person who performs those tasks in socially acceptable ways. Think about how becoming a parent changes not just your behavior, but your entire identity. You're not just someone who takes care of a child. You become a parent with all the social expectations, moral obligations, and identity constraints that come with that role. You start making decisions based on what a good parent would do rather than what you want to do. You judge yourself by parental standards rather than personal standards. You interact with other people through the lens of your parental identity rather than your individual identity. The same thing happens with professional roles. When you become a manager, you don't just manage people, you start thinking like a manager, talking like a manager, and seeing the world through management frameworks. You begin to identify so strongly with your professional role that you lose touch with interests, values, and perspectives that don't fit the managerial identity. Your role starts defining your personality rather than your personality shaping how you perform your role. This role imprisonment becomes particularly problematic when your roles conflict with each other or with your authentic self. The parent role might require sacrifice and selflessness, while the professional role requires ambition and self-promotion. The friend role might require loyalty and support, while the individual role requires honest self-advocacy. Instead of navigating these conflicts consciously, most people compartmentalize their roles and become different people in different contexts. They develop separate identities for separate roles and lose the integrated sense of self that connects all these performances. You might be confident and assertive at work, but passive and accommodating at home. Not because the situations require different behaviors, but because you've internalized different role expectations that feel incompatible with each other. The most insidious aspect of role imprisonment is how natural it feels. You don't experience your roles as constraining performances. You experience them as authentic expressions of who you are. You can't see the ways your roles are limiting your possibilities because you've identified so completely with those limitations. This is why major life transitions, retirement, divorce, children leaving home, career changes, often create identity crises. When you lose a major role, you lose the framework you've been using to define yourself, and you realize you don't know who you are apart from your social roles. The goal isn't to eliminate all social roles. That's impossible and would make social coordination impossible. The goal is to hold your roles more lightly, remembering that you're a person playing roles rather than roles that happen to be inhabited by a person. This requires maintaining some psychological distance from your role performances and regularly checking whether your roles are serving your authentic development or constraining it. Part 5. The teamwork that's making everyone complicit in fakeness. Here's where Goffman's analysis gets really disturbing. Most social interactions require unconscious collaboration between performers to maintain everyone's illusions. creating a system where everyone is invested in preserving everyone else's fake performances. Goffman called this teamwork, the implicit cooperation that happens when people work together to maintain the reality of a social situation. Everyone involved has to play their part correctly for the social scene to work, which means everyone becomes invested in protecting everyone else's performance. Think about what happens when someone at a dinner party tells a story that's obviously exaggerated or untrue. Do you call them out on the inconsistencies? Do you fact-check their claims? Or do you play along, ask follow-up questions, and help them maintain the believability of their story? If you're like most people, you collaborate in maintaining their performance because disrupting it would make everyone uncomfortable and threaten the social reality you're all trying to create together. This teamwork extends to every social situation. In meetings, you don't point out when colleagues are obviously unprepared or when their presentations contain questionable information. In social gatherings, you don't challenge people's self-presentations or question the authenticity of their expressed opinions. In family dinners, you don't bring up topics that would force family members to drop their familiar roles and deal with uncomfortable realities. In romantic relationships, you often avoid conversations that would require either of you to stop performing and start being authentic. Everyone becomes complicit in maintaining everyone else's illusions because everyone's social survival depends on this mutual protection of performed realities. But this creates a social environment where authenticity becomes not just risky, but actually antisocial. Being genuinely honest, expressing real emotions, or dropping your performance disrupts the teamwork that keeps social situations comfortable and predictable. The person who stops playing along with social theater is seen as difficult, inappropriate, or mentally unstable, not because they're doing anything objectively wrong, but because they're refusing to participate in the collaborative maintenance of social illusions. This is why authentic people often feel isolated, and why genuine emotional expression often creates social awkwardness. You're not just being yourself, you're failing to do your part in the collective performance that makes social interaction feel safe and manageable for everyone else. The teamwork requirement means that even when you want to be more authentic, you face social pressure to maintain your performance because other people are depending on you to play your role in their social reality. If you stop being who they expect you to be, it forces them to question their own performances and the authenticity of the entire social situation. Most people would rather maintain comfortable illusions than deal with that level of social uncertainty. So you end up trapped in a system where everyone is performing for everyone else. Everyone knows that everyone is performing, but everyone agrees to pretend that the performances are real because the alternative, actual authenticity, feels too risky and disruptive. The result is a society of people who are all desperately seeking genuine connection while simultaneously working together to make genuine connection impossible. Part 6. The stigma that keeps everyone performing. Here's the dark secret of social performance. The reason everyone keeps acting instead of being authentic is that any deviation from expected social roles creates stigma, social discrediting that can destroy your reputation, relationships, and opportunities. Goffman studied stigma extensively and discovered that people will go to extraordinary lengths to hide any aspect of themselves that might be seen as abnormal, unacceptable, or inconsistent with their performed identity. This isn't just about hiding obvious stigmatized conditions like mental illness, addiction, or criminal history. It's about hiding any information that might complicate the clean, coherent identity you've constructed for public consumption. The successful professional who hides their struggle with depression because it conflicts with their competent image. The devoted parent who hides their ambivalence about parenthood because it conflicts with their loving family persona. The confident social person who hides their anxiety and insecurity because it conflicts with their outgoing character. Everyone is hiding something that they believe would discredit their social performance if it became known. And this hidden information, what Goffman called discreditable stigma, requires constant management to prevent exposure. You have to remember what you've told different people, maintain consistency across different social contexts, and carefully control information flow to prevent anyone from getting a complete picture of who you actually are. This stigma management becomes exhausting because it requires constant vigilance. You're always monitoring conversations for potential threats to your constructed identity, steering topics away from areas that might expose discrediting information and maintaining performances that hide aspects of yourself you believe others would find unacceptable. The tragic irony is that most people are hiding relatively normal human experiences, struggles, doubts, failures, complexity, contradiction that almost everyone can relate to. But because everyone is hiding these experiences, they seem rare and stigmatizing rather than universal and normal. You think you're the only one who doesn't have everything figured out, so you hide your confusion. Everyone else thinks they're the only one struggling, so they hide their difficulties. The result is a social environment where everyone feels isolated in experiences that are actually shared by almost everyone. This creates what Goffman called the spiral of stigma. The more people hide normal human experiences, the more abnormal those experiences seem, which makes people even more motivated to hide them, which perpetuates the illusion that most people don't have these experiences. Meanwhile, the energy you spend managing stigma and maintaining performances could be used for actual personal development, genuine relationship building, or pursuing goals that matter to you. But the social costs of authenticity feel too high, so you continue performing characters that feel increasingly disconnected from your actual experience of being human. The solution isn't to eliminate all social roles or stop caring about others' opinions entirely, but it is about recognizing that much of what you think would be socially catastrophic if revealed is actually just normal human complexity that others would relate to and possibly appreciate. Breaking the stigma spiral requires someone to be willing to risk social discomfort by being more authentic than social norms typically allow. And when one person does this successfully, it often creates permission for others to be more authentic too. Part 7. Finding authenticity in a world of performers. After all this analysis of social performance, impression management, and collaborative fakeness, you're probably wondering, so how do I be authentic in a world where everyone is performing? How do I have genuine relationships when everyone is playing characters? Goffman's insights don't provide easy answers, but they do offer a framework for navigating social performance more consciously and finding opportunities for authenticity within performative contexts. First, accept that some level of social performance is necessary and not inherently dishonest. Complete authenticity in all social contexts isn't possible or desirable. It would be overwhelming for everyone involved and would make social coordination impossible. The goal isn't to eliminate all social roles and impression management. It's to perform more consciously, choosing which performances serve your authentic development and which ones merely serve social expectations. Second, distinguish between strategic performance and compulsive performance. Strategic performance serves specific goals: getting a job, maintaining professional relationships, protecting privacy. Compulsive performance happens automatically because you've lost touch with who you are when you're not performing. Ask yourself, am I choosing this performance because it serves a purpose I care about, or am I performing because I've forgotten how to not perform? Third, create and protect backstage spaces where you can drop performances and reconnect with your authentic experience. This might be time alone, conversations with trusted friends, creative activities, or any context where you can exist without managing impressions. These backstage spaces are essential for maintaining psychological health and preventing complete identification with your performed roles. Fourth, look for opportunities to introduce more authenticity into your front-stage performances. This doesn't mean sharing inappropriate personal information or dropping all social boundaries. It means finding ways to let more of your genuine self show through your necessary social roles. You might share a struggle that others can relate to, express an opinion that's genuinely yours rather than what you think people want to hear, or show an emotion that's actually present rather than one that's socially expected. Fifth, seek out relationships and contexts that reward authenticity rather than performance. Some people and environments are more supportive of genuine expression than others. Prioritize relationships where you can be more of yourself and limit time in contexts that require excessive performance. Sixth, practice recognizing other people's performances without judging them for performing. Everyone is managing impressions and playing social roles for understandable reasons. Seeing through performances doesn't make you superior. It makes you more compassionate about the universal human need to be accepted and valued. Finally, remember that even authentic self-expression is partly performance. There's no completely unperformed self that exists outside of all social contexts. The goal is to choose performances that align with your values and support your genuine development rather than just meeting others' expectations. Authenticity in a performative world isn't about refusing to perform. It's about performing more consciously in service of becoming the person you actually want to be, rather than just the person you think others want you to be. The most authentic people aren't those who never perform. They're those who choose their performances deliberately and maintain enough backstage space to remember who they are when nobody's watching. If this exploration of social performance has made you more aware of your own acting, that awareness is the beginning of choice. You can't choose how to perform until you recognize that you're performing in the first place. Next week, we're exploring Kierkegaard's analysis of anxiety and why having too many choices is paralyzing you instead of liberating you. Subscribe now, because understanding the psychology of freedom might explain why you feel more trapped the more options you have. Your journey toward more conscious authenticity is just beginning, and Goffman's insights are your guide to navigating a world where everyone is performing while still finding opportunities for genuine connection and self-expression.